We have two people who will be running with microphones, and so raise your hand, let us come to you so we get it on the tapes. Also, if you're interested, we will sell these tapes after they've been produced by Laddie, and we can sign up for them at the back of the building. Okay. We'll be passing around 2 sheets to sign up. Somebody back there will be handing them. Please sign them. If you'd like, you can get your email address on there if you want information or anything of that sort. It helps us if we go to apply for grant that we are doing these programs and we have a nice attendance, so we would appreciate that. We will also be passing the hat for money if you would like to give us a donation towards what we do and the things that we've accomplished. We appreciate anything anybody would like to help us with. We're also always looking for volunteers and members. So we do have the membership list at the back. There is a volunteers. We, for instance, tonight, somebody could help bring a pan of bars or something of that sort when we do our programs. And with that in mind, our next program will be August 19th here. It's a Wednesday night, and it will be on the Bailey's Harbor Town Cemetery. Being that I'm the daughter of the grave digger that was out there for 70-some years, I'm going to present the program. Anybody have any memorabilia from the cemetery they'd like to bring down and present? Not sure what that would be, but you never know what you get. So also when we're done, because of the chairs and we're all getting a little bit older, instead of just a few of us hanging up the chairs, each one of you would pick up your chair and hang it up. We would really appreciate that. One final thing. Have you been to the Tuft House where we are now sharing it with the Business Association? We've had our second display put out, and we're going to try to keep changing that at least twice a year. It is amazing the things that we found and that people have brought to us that we can show. Make a point of stopping there and looking at it. It is fascinating. Right now we've got a special display about kitchen utensils, and some of the tools that were in there, a lot of people had no idea what they were for. One of them was for scraping the hair off of a pig after a butcher. It's like, really? So it's fascinating. Now, with that in mind, I am going to introduce Roberta Burlo. She is from Immanuel. She is doing a current history for the church, and so I just snagged her and said, well, as long as you're going to do that, why don't you share it with all of us? So she brings a lot of information and a lot of pictures. Again, if you have something that you can offer to us, please share it. It would be great. So Roberta, it's all yours.
Just to let you know, when Susie had mentioned something about doing this particular presentation, she said, would you help me? And I said, oh, sure, I've got all this stuff I'm putting together for the church. And the next thing was, could you do it? Okay, so there we go. We've got it. And I just want to tell you that it certainly is a pleasure to see all of you here tonight. I do want to send out, before I begin, a disclaimer. And that one is the fact that any mistakes I make are not my fault. I am an import. I do not come originally from here. So that's why I'm saying there's the disclaimer. So add whatever you'd like to, okay? Thank you very much. Now, the first thing that I have to tell you is there is so much more than what I have because I'm still working on confirmation pictures. And just to kind of tell you how our church has kept some of the things, my oldest one that I have is from 1911, which I think is totally awesome. And with some of the confirmation pictures, I've pulled some of the different pastors that we have because I couldn't find pictures of them. So just to give you a little bit of an idea. So let me begin, and you can see from that Bailey's Harbor churches, we are doing, oh, by the way, Susie, is it okay since we only have to do the one church, then do I get the whole extra time? Oh, no, okay, all right. Just thought I'd check about that, you know. And so we are doing Immanuel Lutheran Church. Okay. Now, one of the reasons that I put Luther's coat of arms up is for the simple reason that this kind of represents our church. And you'll notice the black cross inside, and it is set in a heart of natural color. This, by the way, were the words of Martin Luther as he explained it. To remind him that faith to the crucified one saves us. This heart is mounted in the center of a white rose to show that faith brings joy, comfort, and peace. The rose is set in a sky-colored field to show that such joy of the Spirit and faith is in the beginning of the heavenly joy to come. Present already in our joy now and embraced by hope, but not yet made manifest. So those are Martin Luther's words. He just kind of gave us a little bit of an insight here. I'm sure all of you recognize this, okay? However, we do not have the dirt streets anymore. I have probably about 3 different slides showing some of these things. And as I do them, I probably will have some of the slides up for a while because I'd like to do a little explaining. Now, some of this you may have heard because I think Roy Lukes might have presented some of this at one time. Glacial ice still existed in the northern tip of the Dore Peninsula 11,800 years ago, and then 10,000 years ago, there was no ice left in the continent, on the continental U.S. The enormous weight of this ice depressed the crust of the earth at Bailey's Harbor around 45 or more feet, some pretty heavy ice. As the ice melted then, and the earth's surface slowly rebounded, 2 distinct shorelines were left behind due to erosion. The original Immanuel Church was built on top of the glacial Lake Algonquin, the shoreline of that, of about 9,000 years ago, and at 45 feet above the present lake level. When the church then was moved eastward and closer to the street level, its foundation was at glacial Lake Nipissing from about 3,500 years ago, around 20 feet above the present Lake Michigan. Around 2,500 years ago, the Earth's crust returned to its original level. Both Lake Algonquin's and Lake Nipissing's shores had been at lake level during their formation. Then slowly they lifted upward as the ice to the north melted and the Earth's settling down was completed. Just so you know, we will not have a test on this, okay? All right. The land upon which the churches were built, the buildings themselves, and the people who worshiped there and kept the church alive have all played prominent roles in the 122-year history of Immanuel Lutheran Church. This, by the way, is a view from Docks Hill. Jim and Emily's former home was at the right of the photo. That's Jim and Emily Hickey, was at the right of the photo, and the first building on the left is the old Bailey's Harbor Town Hall. Now, if any of you have a discrepancy with this, please help me, because I'm going by what I heard here and what I got. At the top of the picture, you can see Pruder's Mill, and these next 2 pictures, I'll just run them quickly here, shows us another view of the town and even a look in the next one at the church. And this was after 1914. The reason we can tell that is because you'll see the steeple on there. Now, Anklam or Woltman, and I think I spelled that wrong, it has an H in it, Woltman Dock, this shows in 1910, is seen here about that time, and a little over 60 years before this picture, in 1847, Captain Bailey, after whom Bailey's Harbor was named, found shelter for his ship during a bad storm. And then in 1852, Captain Bailey's boss, Allinson Sweet, had constructed a sturdy lighthouse on Lighthouse Island in view from our old church. A new county was identified, and the county seat was established at Bailey's Harbor. By 1891, 1892, occasional services were conducted in private homes by missionary Immanuel M. Brackebush of the Wisconsin Synod. Carl Pyle Sr. called a meeting on May 1st in 1892 of 15 families, which resulted in the organization of the first congregation. Those 15 families were represented by Carl Pyle Sr., William Hine, Fred Krause, or Krause, August Rademacher, John Oldenburg, Charles Abrahamson, Frederick Erke, Frederick Lehman, William Tischler Sr., Herman Oldenburg, Emil Krause Sr., Andrew Polsine, Fred Ray, spelled R-E-H, Otto Onesager, and Henry Kirschner. Now, I'm going to interject just a little thing, and I wanted you to know that one of the granddaughters of these fellas is here tonight. Charles Abrahamson's granddaughter is Laverne Schaubacher, and so you can talk to her later, but I was so happy that she could come from Green Bay, and that's the side that my heritage is. And anyway, I'm glad she came tonight. So, and by the way, that is the side or the family that my husband is from, so our granddaughter is the 6th generation. And I know that quite a few people around here have. In fact, can you raise your hand if you are part of this original? I mean, in other words, was one of your ancestors, okay? Oh, I thought we had more than that. Go on, there we, oh, see there, don't be bashful. I'm not going to make you answer any questions. I just wanted to see your hands. No, 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 no. No, I didn't ask that yet. Well, I taught 30 years in a Catholic school, so it doesn't make any difference. It's okay. Now, in May of 1892, the sites of the church and the cemetery were donated by Mrs. John Oldenburg and Mrs. Woltman. On June 1st of 1892, and I love this phrase, so I just have to share it with you. It said, building operations were begun in a pioneer manner. I think that's kind of cute. I like that. So then by October 1st, Reverend Immanuel M. Brackebush was called as the first pastor in conjunction with his work at Zion Church of Jacksonport. Now, somewhere I read, and I'm not sure if it's true or if I just made it up, but the church, I think, was named after him. I won't swear to it completely. Some of you might give me a disclaimer on that. In September then of 1893, the congregation incorporated and obtained its charter. Pastor Brackebush served Immanuel until January the 2nd, 1901. During the following 29 years, from 1901 to 1930, the congregation was served by 6 different pastors. But I want to emphasize that it was 7 different terms. One pastor loved us so much he came back. The Reverends Dowdett, you'll see pictures of them later, Wendt, Bartkey, who was the one that was here twice, Sturz, Schroeder, and Eggert. Now, a good guess would be that the pastor's salaries did not exceed $65 for the year. I just have to interject this. I found a record book in one of the file cabinets at Immanuel that dates back to 1892. And in there, there are records of the people's giving and the record of what they paid the minister. And that is very true. I saw some $50, one had some $75, so that's what they got paid. And that was for the year. Okay, awesome. And they still stayed. Life was very frugal then, and it was a commonly accepted practice to pay the pastors in part with, and you know this well, meat and vegetables, as well as with wood for heating their home. The women of Immanuel, did you get that? Okay, made items to sell, and many brought food from their farms and garden to help earn money at an annual mission festival held in the old town hall each year. The money they made at the festival was given to Synod for mission work, and you'll hear about the women of Immanuel later too. It was customary for parishioners to walk 3 or 4 miles to and from the church. Those were horse and buggy days. if you're lucky, you were lucky enough to own one. The horses were kept in either one of two stables while the people were attending church. One was located where the Frontier Bar stands today, and the other was on the site of Florian's. Now, this is the Anclam store, formerly Woltman's store, and addition to the left was later used as the Bailey's Harbor Post Office. The old Immanuel Church was moved into that location. That's also another shot of it. And I didn't write down all the names. I have them in my records, but of all the people, the Anclam family, there was quite a few children. And this is the Scenic Grove Hotel, which was owned by the Anclam family and is the site of our new church and parish hall. So we just moved it right out there. You can see the old church located way at the back. If you're here, maybe you can. But you can see the steeple way back there. And that was in on top of the hill, it was in 1892. So, but that had to be 14 because the steeple was on. At Christmas, hang on a minute, there's our old church that was up on the hill. And I remember, if you get a chance to, there is a letter there that we posted that Bertha Reinhardt wrote, and she talks about walking up to the church. And she used to hold on to her mother's skirt tail so that she could get up there. And she was so glad when we finally moved down. But there it was. I want you to also notice that there are 3 windows on each side. You will see why I'm saying that a little bit later. But that's the way it looked back in 1892. And this is a picture of the Christmas altar, and they were usually very ornately decorated with small figures depicting the history of the church, dating back even to the crossing of the Atlantic Ocean by some of those early pioneer members. It's kind of cool to share that. Now, in 1914, as I said before, a new vestibule and steeple were added, as it was still located on top of the hill. Not to be forgotten, as I said before, was the long sloping ramp that led to the stairs that took one up to the church. It says that the ramp went straight west and upward from the street, which of course now is Highway 57. And Bertha was the one that, at 89 years old, was telling that. Just also another little sidelight, I found a wedding picture of Walter and Stella Zahn, and I just thought it was so neat because it was typical for the time, and then also a more modern picture of them. And Walter was actually baptized in 1910, and Roland Pyle, who's Susie's dad, was baptized in 1911. And the minister that did that was Pastor H.E. Eggert. He was serving as pastor at that time. Well, there it is, and now it's beginning to look like a real church. When you put a steeple up there, it kind of gives you an idea what it's like. Kind of cool. Now, this was the rose window that was put at the back at the same time that they did put the steeple up. Then they put that rose window, and this has been preserved in our new church. If you ever come, you will see it as you sit in church and face the altar. It will be to your left. So that was a great thing to do. Now, the original chapel really looked like a church, and the old church was heated by wood in a big box stove that was located to one side and near the front door on the east. A stove pipe went the entire length of the church to the chimney situated on the west end of the building near the pulpit. Naturally, the long hot stovepipe helped considerably to heat the church. And this is our rose window too. An important move occurred in 1928. Now remember that we had been with Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran, and Immanuel ceased relations with the Wisconsin Synod, and by 1930 our congregation had joined, here we go, the English Evangelical Lutheran Synod of the Northwest of the United Lutheran Church of America. Now, that takes a little bit, I wouldn't want to see a letterhead for that one. Reverend Paul A., I think it was Fusto, I think that's the way you pronounce it, served the church from 1930 to 1934, and he was the first pastor to live at the Range Light residence, formerly at the Regis Sanctuary at Bailey's Harbor. The lighthouse was used as a parsonage until 1955. The pastors were responsible for caring for the lights in both the upper and the lower range lights, and undoubtedly were the only combination minister lighthouse keepers on the entire Great Lakes. The use of the range light as a residence was welcomed by the church members, and here's why. Because a sum total of $1 per year was charged by the U.S. Lighthouse Service for the use of the house. We were very frugal, okay? Surrounded by native orchids, other beautiful wildflowers, and pristine woods, those pastors indeed were living in the midst of God's creatures. 1931, a large project was undertaken when the church building was moved eastward and downward near the street. The building was moved by a Mr. Tyke and crew from Jacksonport. Here's the explanation of what they had to do. A heavy timbered structure was built, and the church was moved eastward to the new site and then lowered downward onto the newly built foundation. He also said that the building had to be kept completely horizontal at all times. And no elevators, how about that? To simplify building the foundation, the squared off bluff of limestone was used as a part of the west wall of the basement. Unfortunately, this led to a constant seepage, which some of you that went to church there would know. Now, this is a sequence of that coming down or being moved, so you can see all that had to go on. And that water that was in the basement was a problem all the way up until they demolished the church in 1981. So we shared that little bit there. The newly moved church, now with a basement, was equipped with a coal-fired Kalamazoo furnace. I have no idea what that is. Okay. Walter Zahn served as a janitor for 5 years at an annual salary of $50. On the coldest days of the winter, the furnace had to be heated to, and it was in quotes, red hot, in order to sufficiently heat the uninsulated church. The new church was remodeled by, okay, let me move it on here. This is new. I want you to notice the car that's just showing up a little. I thought that was so cool. It's neat to have all those little reminders. And one of the reasons that I wanted to show 3 different sides is I wanted you to see all the stonework that was also there. The new church was remodeled by Frank Oldenburg and the Broongrabbers. A new entrance and a full basement and an enlarged chancel were added. Do you remember that I told you to see those 3 windows? Now notice this last picture, and you will notice that there are 4, which means that they added some to the back. So the stained glass windows were added. Cool. Reverend Howard W. Gruen was pastor from 1934 to 1940, and it was during his time that on one occasion the council member, all men, had to go out to get pledges for his $900 salary. They failed on their first attempt, and they had to go out a second time to finally get enough money pledged to pay the minister. You know, this gives us new thought for second collections in church. Okay. By 1934, the congregation became self-supporting. The 45th anniversary was celebrated on September 25th, 1937, with the first pastor, Reverend Immanuel M. Brackebush, attending to take part. Also in 1937, the council approved, this is lovely, I just think this is so cool, Harvey and Dorothy Fairchild's marriage at night for September 25th, 1937, because they both were working during the day. I thought that was kind of cool. The Reverend A.E. Baumgartner assumed the pastorate on October 28, 1940, and was here to help with the celebration of the Golden Jubilee on September 26, 1943. Be sure, if you haven't checked it out, we do have a program from some of these events. So, okay. And he also was here then during the difficult period of World War II. 28 young men, 28 members of Immanuel were serving their country in the armed forces. Awesome. The program of debt reduction had been inaugurated in addition, I'd like to know what that was, in addition to the fine efforts of the Ladies' Aid organization. Complete plumbing facilities had been installed at the Lighthouse Parsonage, thanks to the money raised by the Ladies' Aid, and the church interior was redecorated and the congregation was debt-free. Now, this is showing you some of the stone also, in color. And there's some of our new, it's around 1980, 81. And from the balcony. And what's so super cool about this, we can recognize people. There is a man, I know it's not going to show up, but there's a man over on this side, almost to the back, and I think he's here tonight. That's Toby Franke. And his, and his son Randy is sitting right next to him. But there's all kinds of different ones. I know my husband and I were looking at this and, you know, all kinds of different ones there. I thought that was kind of cool. And this shows you the chancel, too, that was added. And the altar. And I just love some of these shots. These fixtures that you see, the lamps, the lights, are still in our church now, but they have a little bit different globes. I just think they were kind of cool. This is just 3 shots. The new pews. Kind of neat. And the balcony. Okay, moving on then. Let me make sure I got this. One of the longest pastorates in 1944 to 1953 was held by this man that you see there with his stole and that on is Robert, I'm sorry, let me back up. Wrong guy. Hang on. It was Pastor Gerard, and he was the one who claimed, oh, this is good, that the lightning strikes on the Range Light residence, parsonage, brought him to his knees more than once. And during 1951, this is kind of interesting, $5,620 was the total receipts. Now, $3,922 of that was used for our own expenses, and $1,698 was for the benevolent causes outside the church. Reverend Marlon Lucht served the church from 1953 to 1954, and A.P. Lee was interim pastor in 55 until Luther Jacobson, now I can go ahead here, until Luther Jacobson was called and installed in 1955. The residence of C.A. Steinke, a member of the church, was purchased for use as a parsonage. The Scenic Grove Resort property that I showed you earlier, directly to the south of the old church, was purchased from the Anklam estate in 1961, and ground was broken on April 29, 1962, for the construction of the parish education building. Ladies, notice the hats. You might even recognize some people there. I know my mother-in-law's there, and her brother's there. Well, anyway, okay. And this then was the day that they did the groundbreaking for the parish hall. Hang on a minute, we have a stubborn sheet here. And the next one. This was the cornerstone for the new education center was laid on July 8th. I thought this was kind of cool that they had it done then. The building was dedicated in November, so they did some hard work there. It's also the year that our church was 70 years old. And therefore you have those. And this is the inside. Still looks this way, but we don't have all those dividers there, so. The Reverend T.M. Spencer accepted the pastorate in 1966 and remained until 1969. And it was during his time, ta-da-da-da-da-da, that the very first woman council person was chosen. Alice Hickey had that honor, and the 75th anniversary of Immanuel was observed in October of 1968. And then the Reverend Larry Warren served as pastor from 1969 to 1973, and it was during his service that the second woman council person was elected, and that is your own Susie Baldry. Yes, yes, okay. Now, while Reverend Keith Luneberg was pastor from 73 to 77, the burning of the parish hall mortgage, not the parish hall, just the mortgage was celebrated in 1976, and new and more comfortable pews, as well as storm windows for the stained glass windows, were installed and dedicated. The Reverend S.M. Becker served as interim pastor during 78. Oh, I got that one wrong. I had 18. It was 1977 to 1978. On July 23rd, then, 1978, Reverend Everett V. Holt was installed as the new pastor. And in that same month, the church members voted to sell the parsonage. Immanuel's 85th anniversary was celebrated on October 22nd, 1978. And on January 28th, 1979, the congregation voted to build a new church. First, the well had to go in because it's back behind the church. So I thought it was appropriate to show this. Now, I also showed this because that's the way it looked before it was added. Ta-da, there we go. And I have some various pictures of the ground was broken. Here, I think I've got, oh yes, here we go. And there's more on the table here. Oh, and there it was, all finished. You can see, let me go back, oh, I guess maybe not. Some of those pictures over there show you how they hooked it to the parish hall a little bit closer. Oh, here it is right here. Parish hall is just to the left side there. And then they hooked that up. Kind of neat. Ground was broken then for the new, let's see, wait a minute here. Okay. Cornerstone, oh, here, I'm just, blah, 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 blah. Oh, yes, that's right. The ground was broken for the new Sanctuary Edition Parish Hall, this part that you see being built, on July 6, 1980, and many items from the old church were incorporated into the new structure. I already mentioned the rose window, and then the chandeliers, and also the stained glass windows, and the pews, which we later replaced, but those were all taken over. Also, to kind of complement the round window in the front, a round stained glass window was made by Susie Baldry and Bill Fairchild, which was similar to the one as well as a Luther's coat of arms. And then Annie Pyle etched Christian symbols into many of the glass inserts in the doors, and I've put some of those symbols out so that you can see what they are. And as I said, there it is. And I thought it was kind of cool. Remember the old church originally had 3 windows? And notice what was incorporated with our new church. Now, we didn't get rid of the other windows, the other 2, because part of 2 of them are up front, and then the other part are in our kind of lobby-like. But it shows you the connection of the 2. And at this time, the old church was still standing. I have a person that I know very well in this picture. Yes. He's just a little bit taller, a little bit wider, a little bit older. Okay. The guy with the stocking hat is our boy Danny. And this was Walter Zahn placing the artifacts into the cornerstone that was being held by Danny. And then John Becker, who has left us, was the mason, and he did the cornerstone laying. And this was on December 7th, 1980. There was a hectic third week in December filled with the last-minute construction projects, and it was followed by a massive cleaning effort by members and the big move of pews and accessories from the old church. The Christmas tree was decorated, and the poinsettias were graced in the front of the church to welcome the friends and members of the first service. And there you'll see the windows. The one on the left, the round one, is that rose window from the original church, from the church, and then the new one on the right. And you'll see the chandeliers. Notice that they now have, instead of the globes, it's kind of like a kerosene lamp type thing. And those of you that have been in the church, you have seen those. So, but it's kind of neat to incorporate the old with the new. Don't ever throw anything out. I've got to tell my husband that. So. And then this was the dedication service that was held March 1st. And if you look at the program from it, quite fittingly, one of the hymns sung at this service was Built on a Rock. I think that's kind of cool. Oh, they're sticking together. Oh, maybe the program, no, hey, I've got it right here. Let's see, 6, 4, 3, 2. Okay, I must have left it in my folder. I'll just keep going on. The cornerstone then was laid, and then after, I just kind of like to, I don't have a whole lot with some of the other things, but I just want to clue you in a little bit. The Reverend T.M. Spencer accepted the pastorate in 1966 and remained into 1969. And it was during his time that we talked earlier about that. And so I want to show you some of those pastors that were there. Now, I do not have a picture of Immanuel Brackenbush, but I did put his name in the dates, and the same way that was kind of interesting for Reverend Dawadat. A lot of times they just wrote his name as John, but I did find that his name was Johannes, good old German name there, 1902 to 1904. And this is Pastor Reverend Fred Wendt. Now, Susie had given me a picture with some of her relatives, and we pulled this picture from that. So that's how we've gotten some of these pictures of the pastors. The pastor on the left was Pastor Barkey, and he was the one that I said had been here twice. So we have him that way. And I have to tell you just a little story about Reverend Sturz. Now, I saw his name spelled many different ways. It was spelled S-T-U-R-T-Z, S-T-E-R-T-Z. Well, I found when I went online, good old online, and he had served a church in Shiocton. And on their website, they had some pictures of their pastors. And this was his graduation picture when he graduated from seminary. So I found out how to spell his name, for sure, for sure. The one we do not have pictures of Reverend Schroeder, and I'm still looking for some confirmation pictures for the 20s. I have none. So it would be interesting if any of you know of anyone that has family from that time. And then also Reverend Eggert, who was here from 1923 to 1927. You then will see Pastor Feustel, I think it's Feustel. See, that German pronunciation I'm not getting. Was here from 30 to 34. I mentioned him. Pastor Grun. And if I had this to do again, I would try to get those pictures where they're supposed to be. So I might rework this. On the left, you will see Pastor Baumgartner, and that's another one whose name was spelt many ways, and I finally found this was the way he did it. Reverend Gerard was here the longest, and I think there might have been quite a few people in the church that were confirmed by him, maybe baptized by him, and maybe even married by him. So, and that goes with all of them, I'm sure. Reverend Lucht was here, 1953 to 54. And I don't think, please don't take the wrong idea here, but I don't think Pastor Lee was real happy. Just a comment. Maybe he was, but, you know, it's okay. I pulled this picture out of the confirmation picture, so maybe that's why. Anyway, okay. And Pastor Jacobson was here for 10 years. Many things were accomplished while he was here, too. Pastor Spencer 1966 to 1969. Pastor Larry Warren was here from 69 to 73. And Pastor Luneberg was here from 73 to 77. And I just had to put Pastor Becker, because he was a really, I call him a cool guy. He was an interim pastor. Very good Christian man. And Pastor Holt was here from 78 to 85. Lots of construction. And I don't know if some of you remember, I do not know if I spelled Pastor Van der Lack's last name correctly. I could not find it any, but he was an interim pastor, and the reason I put him in is because he played an accordion, and me being a music person, you know how that is. So, and then Pastor Stoll was here from 86 to 91. Pastor Dan was here from 92 to 2001. And Reverend Randy Van Ert was here from 2001 to 2004. And our present pastor, Pastor Sue Gunderson, yes, who she was a supply pastor for a while, so that's why I put 2004, and she is still here, the present. She was actually installed then in 2005, so that gives us a little bit of a thing. Now, one of the reasons that I pulled this picture up is it just sort of gives you a little bit of an ending to what we started, and the different things that have gone on from the whole time, and our church. And not only did I want you to see the view of our church, but I wanted you to see the view from our church, which I think is kind of awesome. How many places that you would probably know would have this? So, and that pretty well kind of ties everything up. And thank you for your patience, and any comments or anything that you would like to add. Oh, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Microphone, please.
We could see the growth of the church over the decades. What about the number of members? Do you have any facts or figures regarding, back at 1890 to 1910 and at the present time, about number of members?
I could, in one of this record book that I do have, I could tell you, but I could only give you the male members because they didn't always have the families or how many was in the family. It was usually when the money was given, just the man's name was there. So I'm sure there's records that they have somewhere, but I could, some of that we could look up. It was up and down and up and down. So, any other questions?
This isn't a question, Roberta. I just think maybe you could mention a little bit about Immanuel Woods, because we have an altar out there, too.
Hang on. You want to see some? I didn't
Yes.
know if I'd have time. So
Yes,
hang on.
please.
This was the construction of our, can you see okay? I don't have to turn the lights on or anything. This was when we put our new bell tower and our 3 crosses up. This is just showing the growth. I didn't know if I'd have time to do these, so. And then our Immanuel Woods that we have. It's a beautiful place to celebrate and be with the Lord. We have an altar there, just a makeshift altar. One's kind of made out of nature. And we have a living combo group, okay, that frequent our place. I know you know them. And this is our altar, and then you'll see Pastor's guitar there, so. Gives you a little bit of idea. It's a little more growth that we're doing.
Where is that?
It is out off of Frogtown Road, and I don't know if you know where Cynthia and Larry Kroc live, but it's kind of like right across from where they live. Oh, and then I think there's some type of a thing there. Go out and take a walk. It's beautiful. There's a prayer path there. Yep, there's a path. Even some chairs to sit down.
Roberta, I remember when my dad was alive, and they used to live out in the corner of Double E and F, the Pile Farm.
Okay.
When it was time to go to church, and my grandmother was a wicked woman when it came to going to church on Sunday, that was there's no question you went. And it was a 1.5-mile drive, and it would be winter. But my grandfather would not let them take the horses because it was too cold for the horses to be outside while they were in church. So all the kids lined up and they walked to church. And on the occasion that it was not too bad, he would take the horses down and they would put them in the barn where you talked about before. But it was, you got to church no matter what.
Even
And
if the horses couldn't go.
Yes, and sometimes the boys would sneak out and think they were going to catechism, and a couple of the brothers got caught because they came home, they had been eating something they weren't supposed to, and they got sick. So church was a very, very important thing. It was this community gathering of people.
Sure, it was a social thing,
It was
too.
very much a
Right.
social thing, but it was also the lifeblood of my grandmother. Her Hedwig Pyle was her name.
That's cool.
Anybody else have some questions or little stories? We didn't have any lights on before when we were raising hands. Who has a relative or is a member of Immanuel?
From the
Raise your
the
hands.
original 15 families?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, no, okay. And who is a member now of Immanuel?
Okay.
And they still came even though I was doing this. Okay.
Because
Bless you. Yes.
in our family, there's 6 generations from the church, and I know that in
And
this
in ours
family-
too.
And,
Right. And in Jumbo's,
and in Jumbo.
right?
Yes.
Both sides, the Kraus side and the Tischer side. And I know on ours, Charles Abrahamson was the one that was on the committee, and then his son Carl, and his name, I don't remember if his name or Andrew's name, it's a brother, is carved on the beams of our son's house. Our son is in the Abrahamson family house, and so down on the big beams, they carved their names in there. So, and then our family is also 6 generations too, so it's
Well,
kind
and
of cool.
I
It's
know
really neat.
with Jumbo, it was some of his family, and it was my great-grandfather, Carl Pyle, who was who founded the church,
Right.
so it goes back. You know, you just can't get rid of them, can you?
That's okay. That's okay. When it's sturdy stock, you got to hang on to them.
Anybody else?
Anybody
There's a
else?
hand.
There we go.
So I would like to talk about taking the old church down. Two guys had
There is a
started the
poster back there for that too.
Yeah.
Sure.
I wrote out the story of that when Leanne had it in the one of the newsletters. So I sort of filled out the story. But in 1981, two guys had already started taking the church down. The inside, the middle of the roof had been cut out and dropped, and there was a hole in the floor. The stained glass windows, of course, were gone. The balcony was gone. All the plaster was chopped off the walls. So it was open construction. And one of them always knew that I was going to be building a house. They told me I should help them take it down. So eventually I did look at the church, and then I saw how much good lumber there was. It was all, some of the old, especially the old part of the church was virgin lumber,
Sure.
locally cut, I'm sure.
In a pioneer manner.
In a pioneer manner, right. So I finally agreed to help them. I set a date, or we arranged a date that we would start this. I showed up, nobody else did. And so I started pulling nails, I assumed that they would show up later or something. And the pastor came over and asked what I was doing there. And I explained the situation, and then he said, well, their contract had run out already, and he would have to talk to the church council to find out whether they would even allow me to work on the church. So they did agree to let me take it down if I stayed at it until it was down. So one of the people that sort of took photos was Annie Pyle. So that's in that little story,
Yes.
one of those photos. So I pretty much took it down by myself. Rather scary sometimes.
Was the steeple off of it too?
No, I had to
Okay.
take the steeple down myself.
Okay.
Although I did have somebody help me because the church wanted to save the ornament that was on top of the steeple, which turned out to be a galvanized metal, sort of a ball,
Sure.
shot full of holes, and covered with seagull shit. But
Preservative.
it was fastened on to a cedar post, and the rafters of the tower were all cedar saplings. And so there was enough of a post that the rafters were still attached to that. I could cut the ornament off.
Wow.
And then one person helped me. He had we had a long rope, and he then sort of lowered it down. And then I did everything else myself. And there are some pictures of me taking the steeple
So was
down.
your house totally built with the
My entire house was built
Awesome.
with the wood. Still has the plaster marks from the lath and plaster,
Oh,
and some
my
of the
goodness.
my house
That's awesome.
is completely recycled from the Lutheran
Is there
church.
ever any singing going on?
And there are some other, like the half window that's was over the door.
Okay.
That I didn't use in my house, but I designed and helped build a garage for Linda Silvasi Kelly
Oh, okay.
on Q. My house is on Q too.
That's awesome.
So that's that window and another half window, which I think must have been from the church. It may have been. I'm not really sure anymore.
That's cool.
My sink in the bathroom is still out of the basement bathroom.
Oh, my goodness
wall
sakes.
Yeah, it's a little bit, what do you call it?
Worn.
Not so, a little bit worn, yeah.
Warren, that's great.
Well, now if we don't have a place to go to church, we know where we can go,
That's
don't we?
exactly right. That's exactly right.
I think any of us that went there all remember the back wall seeping in the spring when the water would come down, because it was just the side of the cliff.
Yeah, it was the limestones.
It was. Anybody else?
Any other questions? Oh,
And I didn't have a truck. I carried all the wood to my home on Q on a VW Bug with a luggage rack on the top.
did you get pictures of that?
No, I wish I did. I wish I had at least a picture.
They say you can put a lot in yeah.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Questions? I would just like to close with a little quote that was on one of our dedication things. And this kind of goes with our church. Thank you to every planner who has planned, to every workman who has labored, to every soul who has prayed, to every friend who was sacrificed, for every encouragement, for every suggestion, for every gift. I thought that was kind of cool. And thank you for being patient.
Thank you, Roberta. Just a reminder, would you all help?